Hello, my name is Maria McNamara, and today I'm here with Adam Gilmour from Gilmour Space, who's very kindly agreed to sit in on a conversation with me to talk about his business and how it's facing into the challenges that we're all living with at the moment. This is part of a broader advance.org series of interviews, roundtables and town halls that brings the world to our members. Hello, Adam, and how are you?
Hi, Maria. Very good. Yeah, keep very busy.
Thank you for making the time. So, Adam, let's just cover off a little bit about Gilmour Space. When did you establish it, and what prompted you to build a company that launches rockets?
Yeah, well, we started the company in 2012, but we started building rockets in 2015. And I was an ex-banker. I did a lot of research on the space industry and looked at getting into the space industry. I initially was looking at space tourism. But after a lot of analysis, I realized that access to space was still the most difficult part of the whole space industry, and there were not enough rockets to launch satellites into space. So I decided, okay, I'm going to get involved in that. And I did a lot of research about why were rockets expensive and how could we make them a lot cheaper, and that's pretty much how we started.
That's fantastic. So how big is the company now, and how much fundraising have you managed to secure?
Yeah, so we've got 50 people now in the company, and we've raised 2 rounds of venture capital and a total of 26 million Aussie dollars so far.
And are you raising at the moment?
No, we're not planning to raise at the moment. We have enough cash flow to last for quite a while, and we were planning to raise next year, but our investors have told us to be very careful about managing our cash and making sure we have enough runway to last towards the end of next year, which is what we're working on.
So there's a pre-COVID plan that you would have had and a post-COVID plan. Talk to me about what you had intended to do over the next 12 months and show me the direction that you've pivoted towards given the COVID limitations.
Yeah, so we were planning to raise money in September, October this year to accelerate. We've basically hit a level where we've tested enough technology that we're very confident that things are going to go well. And so we wanted to raise money so we could get more machines, but really hire more people. We really need about another 20 to 25 staff to, as quickly as we can, develop our rocket. So we're very disappointed that COVID came. All the investors kind of got very gun shy, and then we've been told by our main investors, just hold where you are, conserve your cash, and if you're going a bit slower, it doesn't matter, we'll still take it. Cash is king right now, so it's slowing us down, and that's annoying.
So now that you've slowed things down, what can you be doing in this period in order to what's the best use of your time over the next little while until things settle down?
Oh, well, we're still testing technology. We're still doing rocket engine tests. Like we did an engine test yesterday. We did another one today. All the different subsystems of the rocket. We're still doing a lot of design work, and we are, going full steam ahead with that. Nothing's really slowed us down from COVID's point of view of restricting business. Some of the things we're seeing is it takes a lot longer to get parts from overseas, and that's impacting us a bit. So some of the components we're buying from overseas might take a month extra, and so we have to wait a month longer to test something, which is difficult. But otherwise, we've been pretty lucky because we're doing a lot of design work. We can do that from home. So we've been swapping out our stuff 50-50 each week, and we've been able to do a lot of work from home because we take our computers home, we do all our design work at home, and that's been pretty good. If it was a year later when we were building a rocket out in the factory, that would impact us more.
So talk to me about the staff that you've got and the staff that you hope to attract when it's time. What kind of skills have you found locally, and what kind of skills do you have to look for overseas?
Okay, so mainly there's not a lot of experience in building rockets in Australia. Generally what we've tried to do is all the heads of all the departments have been foreigners, and we've got them from rocket companies all around the world that have had deep experience building rockets. But most of the people underneath them don't need that much experience. So we've been able to hire most of the people under these managers from Australia, a lot of graduates, and then people with 2 or 3 years experience. And we're still looking for a couple of more people that are kind of like 5 to 10 years mechanical engineering experience. They seem to be coming out of the oil and gas industry, and we're going to embed them into the team as well.
And have these senior executives come to live in Australia, or are they working remotely?
No, they've come to live in Australia, so they're all living in the Gold Coast.
Wasn't a hard sell.
No, not really.
So talk to me about your customers in terms of who buys the services that you offer. What is, who are your customers? What kind of customers do you have now? And what kind of customers, more importantly, do you want?
Well, most of the pipeline of deals that we've got and the contracts we've signed so far are with overseas customers. So we knew that from the start. The business we're in is a global business. So there's satellite companies all over the world. They're all through Asia, North America, South America, and Europe. There are some satellite companies in Australia, but they're not very big. We're still talking to them. We'd love to launch them as well. The piece that we're missing right now is any government business. So we haven't got any launch contracts from the government yet or the Defence Force. We're talking to them. We're hopeful that we'll get some in the future, but as of now, nothing.
And is that because the government's not doing anything, or because they just haven't bought from you yet?
They've been very sporadically buying launches and satellites. They want to be more proactive. They're kind of building up the case and organising themselves. We predict in the future they will be quite a big, especially defence, a big buyer of launch and a big buyer of satellites. So, they're not like dealing away and dealing with someone else at the moment. So it's really just when they get themselves together and start the new program.
So if we were writing your press release in, say, 24 months' time, what are the sort of things that you would be talking to me about then?
In 24 months' time, we're imminently launching our first rocket into space. So we'd be showing you photos about the rocket, on its way to the pad or on the pad. And, we want to have at least 5 to 7 launch contracts done by then. And some of those we want to be from defence and our government. And the rest we want to be from overseas customers. I think one of the points we definitely try to make to the government is we're not a domestic business. We are an exporting business. Our customers are international. So that's what we really want to make a lot of noise out of.
And in terms of the hurdles you've overcome in order to achieve that objective, what is the one thing in a couple of years' time in that press release that you would be most proud of?
I think putting the rocket together, it's a combination of so many different technologies. Australia's got no infrastructure for us right now. There's not an industry that we can lean into to get products like there is in America, for example. So, in 2 years' time, when we have an assembled rocket, then we've assembled everything from the nozzles all the way to the nose cone. And that will be a huge effort. Plus, we've got all the approvals done from the Space Agency and a launch site that we can actually launch from in Australia. That will be another big effort.
So, Adam, what you've chosen to do isn't necessarily the simplest thing in life, but clearly what you've done is you've decided to make a market. When you make a market and you're first, it's slow going, it's full of risk, but you clearly see that there is tremendous opportunity. How significant a market can this be in the next, say, 2 to 5 years?
Well, the market for launching satellites into space right now is between 5 and 10 billion US dollars a year. So it's like 15 billion Aussie dollars. And the projection in 5 years is it's going to double or triple. We think the market for the smaller satellites that we're going to launch in 5 years' time will be about 7 to 8 billion Aussie dollars annually, annual revenue. And we want to be a good chunk of that.
So you talked about the size of rocket launches. Is there something, one would imagine that many of the competitor organisations are backed by significant resources. What makes what you're offering special? What is your value proposition?
Well, our value proposition is, we've designed a rocket with technology that we think is vastly simpler than other propulsion elements. We have a technology called hybrid rocket engines. And we think they're a lot simpler to manufacture. So far, they have been. And also, because we don't have the same resources as some of our competitors, we're a lot more careful with our money and we're designing for cost. And that is a very foreign concept in aerospace that's designed for cost, because normally you don't have to worry about cost, but we certainly do. And what that results in is a very, very cheap or inexpensive launch vehicle.
So I remember when, and I'm not comparing you at all, but you take it whichever way you want, but I remember when Hyundai came into the market, they built a car for a price. Is that essentially what you're talking about here, that you've set a price and you're manufacturing to that price?
Correct. Yeah. So we've set a price that we've talked to customers about and signed contracts with, that we're confident we can make manufacture, below that price, so we can make a profit. And it is a level that customers all over the world, very importantly, think is an enabling price for their business. So a lot of our competitors' prices are so expensive, it's not profitable then to have a satellite business, but with our price, they can. That's a big difference.
That's enormous. So what's really interesting when we're talking about space is that we want to start as we mean to end. So the environmental conversation crops up quite often in Q&As with you and with others. Given that we do want to end as we want to start as we want to end, what are your environmental guides, the guardrails within which you're working? How much care do you want to take in terms of what you send up and how you manage what's up there?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, we look at environmental risk from on the ground. Like when we launch, what comes out of our rocket, what's the exhaust? And we're very happy to say we have a green propellant system. So the only thing that comes out of our exhaust is carbon dioxide and water. And it's at levels we can manage very easily with, planting literally an acre of forest for every rocket launch we have, which isn't a big deal. So we've already looked at that. And then in space, we want to make sure that we don't have debris hanging around in space. And our propulsion system is fantastic because we can start and stop our engines multiple times. So we have the ability, unlike most of my competitors, of deploying the satellite, then turning the engines on again and slowing down and then deorbiting the third stage so that it doesn't stay in space and cause space junk.
That's amazing. So talk to me about your sites in Australia. One would imagine whenever they talk about a new airport, it took 44 years and we finally got one, but the neighbours weren't all that thrilled because of the noise and the pollution and all the bits and pieces. How are you managing the physical launch pad, the issue of where to locate it, how to get to it, how to sustain it, support it?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It's a tricky situation because what we see in the other countries is the government provides that infrastructure, the way the government, provides for airports and train stations. The government hasn't been willing so far to pay for the infrastructure. Doesn't need to be a lot of money. We're looking at between $10 and $20 million to set up a launch site. When you set up a launch site, you've got to be somewhere a long way away. So very, very remote. Remote is key. So not near any big towns or near any big air traffic going overseas or shipping. So the sites that we're looking at is in North Queensland and another one in South Australia. And both of these have really good locations to launch rockets from. They're both remote. And we're working with a company in South Australia that's managing that site and directly with the Queensland government for the Queensland site that, we will have a lot to do with.
So, Adam, when you're talking to recent graduates and they're talking, or students, and you're talking to them about the sort of careers that you want to see grown in Australia, the sort of skills grown in Australia, we touched on it earlier. What are the sort of opportunities that a company like yours and an industry like yours will create for Australians coming into this space?
Well, quite a lot. I mean, rockets are complicated, so they need a very, very diverse amount of talent. So if you just look at engineering, we hire electrical engineers, chemical engineers, mechanical engineers, aerospace engineers, physicists for our orbital mechanics stuff. And then we also have people in finance, in marketing, human resources. And then we have a whole lot of people that we will need in the future that are manufacturers. So these are people that will come out of the TAFEs. There'll be machinists and fabricators and welders and electricians. So when we start building the rocket, we're going to need about 100 to 150 of these people. And then the bigger we get, we'll need 400 to 500 of these people. So very, very diverse range of skill sets we need.
When we look at the kind of industries that we've currently got and the projection for those industries that an organisation like Fathom has done recently with its modelling, are there any industries where you can repurpose skills? Can we transition workers out of existing industries in Queensland, for example, where demand for their goods and services will drop over time, and reskill them and bring them into your industry?
Yeah, the two main industries that we believe we can get people from is the oil and gas industry and the car industry. So, you know, there's obviously big differences between a car and a rocket, but not as big as you'd think. So a lot of the skill sets we think we can use. And then a lot of the skill sets in the oil and gas industry are very good to manage our launch operations, you know, all the pipes that go from storage tanks into the rocket and stuff like that.
So when you look at farming, you've got all the related industries. What kind of organisations sit in your ecosystem?
Well, we have a lot. I mean, we already deal with about 300 different suppliers, and that's everybody from the nuts and bolts to the metal, machining, marketing supplies, computers, desks, stuff like that. I'm always amazed when I look at my list of who we pay money to, how many different types of people we pay money to.
And most of those are overseas at the moment, but what opportunities exist for Australian suppliers?
Oh no, that's all Australian suppliers.
Oh, they're all Australian suppliers.
Yeah, so we do buy some components from overseas, but we have 300 Australian suppliers into our company already, and I wouldn't say we're that big right now.
So the Prime Minister has made the observation that COVID has given us an opportunity to think about recovery differently, and he's called for big ideas. I don't know that you can get any bigger than a launch industry. If you were briefing the Prime Minister, what opportunities would you be talking about specifically in terms of a great place to invest and for the sort of return that we haven't already talked about?
Yeah, well, I mean, what I look at, especially with my banking hat on, is, you know, how many jobs can you create for the amount of dollars you invest? And, you know, if you look at a very successful rocket company like SpaceX, they have like 15,000 employees now. And then some of the other rocket companies have about 10,000 employees. That's just in one company. So if we become successful and there's another company that becomes successful with launching, then that's already just in our companies, you know, 10,000 people. And then there's probably another 10 to 20,000 in very, very adjacent industries. And the amount of money that you need to do to get to there is just hundreds of millions of dollars, low hundreds of millions of dollars, not billions of dollars. So I look at the government that invests billions of dollars in some of the big defense projects, and those people are employing 500 people. I could employ 500 people with a couple of $100 million. So I think bang for your buck, space is good.
I can't think of a better place to end. Is there anything else that you wanted to raise today?
No, I think we've covered everything. I just think we're not going to give up. You know, we're looking to grow, and we can't wait for this thing to finish and for the investors to come back, and we're going to keep going.
Well, the judges made a great decision last year in making you the Advanced Advanced Manufacturing winner, and I'm really delighted to have had this conversation with you. All power to your arm. I can't wait to see this company fly.
Great. Thanks, Maria. It's my pleasure.
Bye-bye then.
Bye-bye.